Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at spunkyoldbroad.com. And now, back to the show.
I'm back with Annette Fazio, and she's been telling you about the book she's been writing that is now out about firefighters. The fact that she opened a restaurant when she had no background in it at all, did $1 million or more. How she fed firefighters, through 9/11. But now I'd like to talk to you about some of the other hurdles and hardships that you've overcome to get where you are now. We know your family died when you were young. We know that you had a husband who passed away. We know you've connected with a high school sweetheart. And we know that you were not a happy person going through all of this, and you were left with two small children. So what were some of the other hurdles and hardships that you had to overcome to get where you are now?
Oh, how much time do you have? No. Well, I mean, it's a hardship that I'm not sure how it affected me as an adult, but I was nearly burned to death when I was 2.5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And I at a very young age, I had some very nasty scars on my neck and on my chest and on my arm. And you know how wonderfully kind children can be.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of ridicule there. And something else that was very traumatic in my youth was that my house went on fire when I was 7, which is another connection to the fire department.
I was just going to say, I'm beginning to see this connection now.
Yeah. I mean, they came and the house was not completely burned. So my father was a carpenter and he made my brothers sleep under the stars and they rebuilt the house. But, as a child, my most precious possession was my first Holy Communion dress, and it burned. And I was like, really? I mean, as an adult, I'll say really, but as a kid, I was heartbroken. I mean, that's, but my sister also lost her prom dress. And, it was very, very difficult. And the only clothes that I had, at least for the first couple of days, belonged to the little boy that lived behind my sister. And so he was the little boy. He says, "Oh, those are my pants." So as a little girl, who knows how that affects you as an adult? Other than the fact that, my mother dying when I was 20 and now I did have an embezzlement. That was fun. I had an embezzlement. Some people only watch courtrooms on Law and Order, but I got to be on the stand for 3 days.
Wow. That's not fun.
No. Well, by the time I was done, I was friends with the court clerk. I was friends with the judge. I'd come in there, "How you doing?" "Good. How you doing today?" I'm like, oh my goodness, which is an exciting experience to remember. I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, these are things that people don't usually experience, and I experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
But then that was tough to have my dining room manager, who I truly cared for. I mean, I would thank her every day for being there to help support me while she was stealing thousands of dollars. And I know I'm not the only one at that, because there was another gal in town. Her dining room manager did the same thing, and she had her in the wedding party.
Wow. Well, of course, that's why they have all these checkmates now on how you total your books and find out what you've got and so forth. So
Yeah.
Was there anything else that comes to mind that you feel had an impact on getting you where you are now?
Well, getting me to where I am now, I think just moving forward, you have to show up. You really half of the battle is showing up. Believing that there's good. Jack Canfield, I read it in his book, said, get up in the morning and say, yeah, the universe is out to do me some good today. I can't wait to see what it is. You go into the day with that, you see so much more than another day. So abject poverty, being near homelessness. I was technically homeless when I had 2 children. And that, but again, it's showing up. There were people that were so kind to me, I didn't wind up on the street. There's wonderful things around us, always. There's more to be grateful for, always, than there is to be miserable about. And somebody gave me a challenge once to write 100 things I was grateful for. Well, around number 80, I was grateful for leaves.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like when I look at and maybe some of the women who are listening here can appreciate this. When I look at my body, I know what it was because I'm going through my storage unit and I'm seeing all these old pictures of me, and God, were they great. and I've had so many surgeries, 16 surgeries on my chest because of breast cancer. And I look and I think, oh, because I don't look it because I know how to dress, but there's just nothing I can do about it. Think about it. I've had 3 cases of breast cancer and I'm here and I work out every day and I have wonderful friends and I do these radio shows, and that's to be grateful for. So if you were to say, that there's one unusual development in your life, one that you didn't see coming, would you like to share that?
One that I didn't see coming. Well, I forgot that I had breast cancer.
Okay, there, I just reminded you. Okay.
You just reminded me.
Which she just goes to show you that, how we go through these things, which are just, we don't know at the time what's going to happen. And you forgot. And 90% of the people who know me have no idea I'm a 3-time survivor, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and 16 surgeries, because I just don't talk about it unless it's appropriate. So it's it just shows you what the universe can do for you to help you forget these things and then appreciate the good things that happen to you. So would you say that's the unusual development, or is there something else?
No, there was one more. When I was a sales rep back at the radio station, I did great when I had to go out and meet people and knock on their door, and and they liked me and I made them laugh and they bought. But one day my boss looked at me and he said, "It's time for you to start writing letters to the bigger accounts so I could get bigger sales." And I looked at him, I said, I don't know how to write. I mean, I went through school, but I made all my English teachers laugh, so they passed me. Clearly, they knew I was not going to be, either an engineer or, heavy-duty writer. And I just say, he says, write the way you talk. I said, well, I talk a lot. What am I talking about, 23-page letters? And he laughed. And he said, just write the way you talk, you'll be fine. Well, that terrified me to the point of being paralyzed. I was absolutely, I could barely think about it. And I found a way to make it make sense to quit that job because I couldn't write a letter. And then later on, after I had the restaurant, and of course you have to write a business plan, and you've been in business, so you know what a business plan looks like, war and peace. And then I started writing a newspaper column. And then I wrote a book. I mean, those 2 things was a completely surprising development in my life.
See, you never know what you can do until you do it. And a lot of people will tell you, if you can't sit down and write a book, talk the book, talk it into a recording device, and then have somebody transcribe it, and then you can edit it from there. So for those people out there who want to write a book but say the same thing you did, I can't write. You can speak it into a recording device of whatever kind you want and have it transcribed. And it's so interesting because that's really what it's all about. And your boss was right. You write the way you speak because that's how people know you and that's how people value you. So that's a very key point. So how did somebody, or how can somebody who is not a firefighter relate to those in your books and their extraordinary behavior?
Well, like I said, we use the book, the firefighter stories, as a metaphor, and then the questions that come at the end of the chapter draws out their own experience. And it's just a matter of recognizing what you've done and honoring it. Not so that makes you better than anyone else, but when something else comes your way, you know, I got this. I can handle this. I don't feel like it, but I can do it. And I try to make the firemen stories, relatable, very relatable, not amazing, jumping off, climbing 16-story buildings, but just everyday things that they had to face, and that they were called upon the job. So they get called upon these tasks and they were trained. And so are the people, so are you. I mean, you're not doing what you did because you woke up one morning and said, oh, I think that'll be a good idea. We don't honor what we've learned either.
Well, it's interesting, what you were talking about, a business plan of, 43 pages. I was in business at 21. I didn't have one business course. I didn't have a business plan. I was in business for 2 weeks when I got a cease and desist letter from my biggest competitor, who thought this little girl was going to take over the world, and gave me a cease and desist letter, which I didn't even know what it was. I had to go find an attorney who could explain it to me and then tell me what we had to do. So, I really did it from the ground up. I never had a business plan. I never did any. I just did it. And so I want you to tell our audience, you're over 50. In all the experiences we've
way over 50.
Well, not as way over 50 as I am. And what's different in your focus now that you're over 50? How do you look at life differently, I guess I would ask?
Well, and I joke about this, but I go, I refuse to tell my body how old I am. That's number one. I mean, people do wear their age like a badge of courage, and they don't live life to the fullest. I started snow skiing when I was over 40. Most people start when they're 10. And I started playing tennis at 65. And I'm still playing tennis. It's like, why should I tell my body how old I am? Because it might think it can't do something. Mm-hmm. I climbed into the Grand Canyon. I climbed into the Grand Canyon and out. I was over 60 years old. Mm-hmm. Twice. It's age is a number in your head, period.
Well, it's so funny because I took an Uber home the other night when I came back from California, and the guy was he lived in Boca, but he was down there. He had brought somebody to the airport, so he took me, and then he was looking for somebody to go back to Boca. And we were talking about what he did. He was retired, and I asked him how long he'd been driving for Uber and if he liked it, and he said it was only part-time and blah, blah, blah. And then I don't know how we got into this, and he asked me, how often do I travel? And I said, all the time. And he said, well, why don't you spend time with your family? Kids are important and blah, 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 blah. And do you have any children? And I said, yes. And he said, you have a daughter? And I said, yes. And he said, well, don't you want to spend time with her? And I said, I spent 60 years with her. And he said, He said, "How old is your daughter?" I said, 60. And he said, "Well, how old are you?" And when I said I was 80, he said, "You can't be." And I said, "Well, I am." He said, and then the whole conversation changed. What do you eat? Do you exercise?
Right.
And what do you do all day? And then it got into how am I in such good shape? And I have so much energy. He said, "You're lugging your suitcase. You don't look," and this went on the whole rest of the trip.
Right.
So it's all about, I believe, attitude and how you think and so forth. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I don't stop moving, and I don't think you do either. You know,
that's the point. That is the point. So but you always moved. So what's different in your focus now?
uh, well, well, I want to say there's not a lot, except I'm doing things like being on the radio with the famous Gayle Carson. I definitely always have friends that are much younger than me. I'm not talking about 14-year-olds, but I'm most of my friends, almost all of my friends, are a good 10 to 15 to 20 years younger than me.
I believe that because my friends go from like 25 to 95. So, so
Exactly.
I get that. I get that
And,
totally.
and the people that are closer to my age, I truly honor and love. But the people that are younger, I love, but they keep me young. They think differently. I mean, they think the whole world is still right out there. And well, I laugh. I say working with 15-year-olds for all those years, that
Mhm.
kept me young too. I mean, I had a big place, so I would, and we connected with those kids. We weren't just the old people running the place. I mean, if they had issues, they talked about it. So I mean, I look at people. I do love watching people. It is my favorite, especially when I go to New York. Watching people is that keeps me young. So there are just things that keep me young. I'm still writing. I need to do a little bit more on my blogging, but I'm getting ready to launch another book, a business book called Don't Let Them Eat Your Lunch, 37 and a half tips on running with the big dogs. It's I mean, if I'm not physically moving, my mind is moving.
And
And
that's important. That's
right.
important.
And one thing I really want to stress is that if somebody has something in their heart, if you have something in your heart that you think is worthwhile, do it. Because the gal that really started this whole movement after 9/11, she was a single mother, a less than ordinary job, and a child. She was definitely not your affluent individual. And she says, "What can I do to help?" And so she thought, well, I can feed the firefighters spiritually and physically once a month. And she had no idea what that looked like and no idea how she was going to pull it off. And it turned into a project that gave the whole Seacoast area, a lot of businesses in the town and the Seacoast area, a feeling of that they had now the ability to do something, that they were helpful when the nation at the time was full of helplessness feeling.
Mhm.
After so it doesn't matter if you think it's a good idea, put it out there, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It does. Well, you know the old thing. Somebody says, "Why don't you go back and get your college degree?" Well, I'm going to be 65 in 5 years. Well, you're going to be in 65 whether you take a college course or not.
No, it's true. I'm so excited when I hear people in their 80s that are even getting their high school diploma. I think it's just fabulous. But I
Yes.
want to ask you, what's your most burning point that you want to leave our audience with?
Well, everyone has their own version of a burning building. They have, they all have their own emotional crises that they have to go through, and many times they see it as a threat. Everyone experiences crisis, but people rise above the crisis, and then they don't give themselves the credit for it. They minimize it. They think it's no big deal, and anyone could have done that. But that's not so. You know, there are people that turn away from the crisis and hide. They don't live their life. They don't support the people around them that's having the same crisis. They duck out. They shirk all their responsibilities. And so when you stand tall and make it through it with grace and dignity, that is something to celebrate. It's a journey that you should celebrate, your own journey of courage and commitment.
You know, I think the young people at Parkland really are exemplifying that, what they have created and done. And they're so articulate, and they've created this movement not only around the country, but around the world. It's just amazing. And of course, they've got now the social media and the technology ability to do that. But that's a great example as well. Well, yes. I wanted to have people know how they can find you, Annette. Where can they find you and get in touch with you?
Well, I do have a website. It's called Annette Fazio.com.
And that's 2 N's and 2 T's in Annette. ANNETTEFAZIO, correct?
Correct.
AnnetteFazio.com.
Right. And my phone number's on there.
Okay. And what do you have on your website? Do you have items that they can buy?
No, actually, my book, I have a link to Amazon because my book is on Amazon. And I'm getting ready to put on a couple of presentations, on recorded presentations on the how to, stay in business. But
what's the name of your book? I don't think that we ever said what the name of your book is.
Oh, well, see what happens? It's Finding the Leader Within.
Finding the Leader Within. So if you go to Amazon and you're interested in this book that Annette has written that has the story of all these different firefighters, Find the Leader Within is the name of the book, and that's what you should get. And, I know that there are many, many stories in there, and I'm sure you have a favorite one. We just have a few minutes left. Is there one particular story that you want to emphasize to our listeners?
Yeah. His name is Carl Badesian, and he was a firefighter. He actually, you want to talk about stubborn. He at one time donated bone marrow to a stranger, saved somebody's life. Somehow something happened during the course of a fire that he didn't even know, but he wound up paralyzed. And they said, "You'll never be a firefighter again." And he said, "This is what I love. I have to do this." And they said, "You won't." Doctors, they sent him off to a rehab where quadriplegics were, so he could learn. And he stuck with it. And his family stuck with him. And his fellow firefighters came every day to encourage him. He not only got back onto the fire department, he had to take the physical all over again. I mean, that is determination. But that's what the support of the people that love you and your own belief that you can do this can do. And it's just, and then I got to know his wife at the time. And it's one of my favorite stories because it just says, show up, don't quit, and you'll get to wherever you're going to be. And everything is always going to be okay. We just don't know what okay looks like.
I think that's great. I think that's what we really need to leave our listeners with. We don't know what okay looks like, but whatever it is okay. Just show up and keep doing what you want to do. Well, my guest has been Annette Fazio. To reach Annette, you can go to her website, AnnetteFazio.com. Her phone number is listed there as well. And you will be able to get her book on Amazon. And she has a new book coming out that I'm sure she'll let everybody know about as soon as possible. So, Annette, I want to really thank you for being with us today. And it just shows you that it's never too late and you can always be who you'd like to be. I mean, within reason. I'm never going to grow to be 5'7". That's for sure. So,
I'm never going to be the president of the United States. So,
well, you never know. You never know in that. So we have to keep that in mind. But I want to thank you for being with us today. It's been a pleasure and much success in all your future endeavors.
And thank you, Gayle. And thank you very much for being a role model.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, you will. Take care. Thank you.